Hello, Karu. I just watched your response to my change management video, and I think there's two different things going on here. Um, and there's the issue of bureaucracy, and bureaucracy for the sake of bureaucracy, and then there's the issue of trying to coordinate when the scale of the problems you're trying to solve gets larger than just a few people can handle on their own. So, for instance, the example of your coffee shop. I mean, that's pretty straightforward. There's no real, like you said, it's fairly commonsensical, and you can handle with things on your own. And actually, interestingly, if you look at different philosophies on management and customer service, I don't know if I've talked to you about this, but we did a customer service workshop, a full-day workshop a few years ago, and we came up with a set of principles for customer service that we were trying to provide. And I worked with a consultant to facilitate the customer service workshop that we were doing, and I spent a lot of time with her looking through different curricula for customer service and different approaches. And all these people want to do role playing and lots of things. And with my staff, I knew that wasn't going to work. I knew that there were at least half of my staff members that if you started doing role playing, it was over. You lost everybody. So what we did was I just found some YouTube videos where people told stories about customer service and what was good customer service and what was bad customer service. And then, as a group, we had a discussion about what we thought, how that related to our jobs, and how, we could make that work for us. And over the course of and we just brainstormed and came up with a list of all these. And what we did was we actually came up with a set of principles for good customer service, and then a set of tangible steps, things you could ask yourself if you'd done in handling a customer. I don't remember them off the top of my head, but it's about communication. It's about making sure you're touching base with your customer every time that there's a major milestone in your project. And generally we're talking about projects that last over a period of months here. There are a lot of small interactions that are, and those are fairly easy and straightforward, and customer service on those it's intuitive, just like in a coffee shop. If somebody comes in, you respond to their need, and you try to understand what their underlying need is, because often they'll come in and say, I want this, and there's a greater need that they're trying to address. Anyway, the point of all this customer service thing was we came up with these principles and then these guidelines, and made a note card for everybody to have. And because everybody on staff had been in this workshop together, we all had a pretty strong shared understanding of what we meant by these principles and guidelines and how to apply them in our job. And so the idea wasn't to set up a policy and that you have to follow, a dictatorial policy where you're watching somebody. But the idea is to create a shared understanding of what you're trying to achieve. And in the coffee business, I think running the coffee shop, yeah, you can say it's either there or it's not. In something as complicated as a government, where we have, as I mentioned, we've got law enforcement, we've got, children and family services, we've got housing, we've got water and sewer services, we have roads, we have domestic violence, we have a natural resource management program, we have education department. We have gaming enforcement. There's this incredibly complex, different series of things going on. And as a government, the goal is to serve the tribal public and residents of the reservation. And that's not as clear as making money and getting people coffee, or responding to their orders. And what you end up with is a whole bunch of people in the community coming to the board and saying, we want X. And the board saying, okay, we're getting you X by doing this thing in education, we're doing this thing in housing, we're doing this thing in children and family services, and we're doing this thing with stipends from the casino. And that's how we're meeting your X need. And the problem becomes, you've got this incredible complexity. You've got all these different people doing the best they can on their own, but often they're working at cross purposes because they don't understand what everyone else is doing, and they don't understand how what they're doing relates to what everyone else is doing. And so what you need to do is, the policies you have need to set up the framework within which you get the freedom to make your own decisions and do what you want to do. And the larger your organization is and the lower down you get in the organization, the less freedom you're going to have to do that often, because you're trying to achieve a really high level goal often. So, examples I can talk about in our organization. I think I mentioned this before, but who's responsible for maintaining a list of employees and all their information? Well, we have an HR department that feels like it's their job to do that. We have a benefit coordinator in HR who thinks it's partially her job to do that. We have the hiring people, the employment people, they think it's their job. We have a finance department that has to pay everyone. They think it's their job. And so you've got different people in different areas. We've got a wellness officer who thinks it's her job to keep track of all those people. And we actually have multiple databases of these people, so that we don't have one comprehensive list anywhere. Now, finance may be the most accurate one, and finance basically says to HR, screw you, we don't trust your list, we're going to do what we want because we're actually paying the money. But often, HR has the ability to hire and fire people, and if they don't keep finance up to date, then people don't get paid correctly. And then we also have, in IT we have a list because we do building access and computer access. So we have another list. And we don't get notification from those other people. So unless you have processes where you say, this information needs to flow between these people, you're going to have a non-functional organization. You're going to have all these inefficiencies where people are doing their own thing, doing it the way they want, and especially when it comes to IT. So we have 600 computers in our organization, over 600 computers actually, and we've got a huge variety of levels of expertise on those computers. And we have people who don't know a lot about the computers, but are very conservative in the way they use their computers and are safe users. We have people who know a lot about computers, but that take a lot of risks and end up having a lot of problems with their computers. We have a staff in our IT program of 5 people. They've got to maintain those 600 computers. They've got to, try to prevent viruses from occurring. They've got to try to maintain all the software so it works the same on all the different computers. They've got to maintain things so that information that can be used on one computer can be used on another computer. And that is simply not possible if we just let everyone maintain their own computers the way they want to. What ends up happening is you've got, a scientist in one department who does mainly research and has been using this modeling software since he was in grad school 20 years ago, and if he had his way, he'd be running a DOS machine. You've got somebody working on the newspaper who loves Macs and the graphics software, and if they had their way, they'd be doing everything on Macs. And you've got, secretary somewhere who wants to use WordPerfect because that's what they learned on, and they want to stay with that, and you end up, you know, with just chaos, and people can't communicate with each other. It becomes a Tower of Babel. So at some point, and at some level, you have to do this in your organization. You have to set standards. Now, you can either do that in an extremely prescriptive way, or you can try to do it by clearly articulating the goals and the outcomes that you desire, and giving people freedom within that framework to creatively address those things. And that's the approach that I advocate. Actually, we just this last year got a new computer policy adopted for tribal government, and Sean and I went through the old computer policy and cut about a third of it out. And it was these real specific things: thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do this. And instead, we put in something where we said, the IT department has the responsibility to maintain the good functioning of our information systems. If an employee is doing something that's harmful to the functioning of the information systems, we have the right to prevent that, to ask them to change that behavior. However, if an employee is not doing something that harms our information systems, it is up to the employee's supervisor to take care of them as far as productivity. So we're not telling people, we no longer say you can't access your personal email, you can't goof off on the internet all day. We don't care about that. As long as if you're goofing off on the internet all day and it's low bandwidth sites, from IT, we don't care, because it's not affecting the systems that we have to maintain. Our goal is to ensure that the entire organization can function. It's the supervisor's goal to check the productivity of their employee, and how they're using their computer is just one aspect of that. So when I talk about change management, though, for instance, when we moved into this new building, you know, as an organization, when we moved into the new building, it's way cheaper for the organization to buy all new furniture and have every office have the same basic furniture layout in it. And that way, when somebody moves offices, they don't have to pick up their furniture and move it, and it doesn't break the furniture, and you don't have to replace it, because that's how most furniture gets broken. And we had huge fights on our hands where people had a desk that they had purchased, and they desperately wanted their desk, and they wanted it moved in their office. And it's just because that's what they wanted. It's what they were used to. And having this rule that says we're all going to have the same desk, it's not that big a deal. If you have a disability, if you have a human factors thing, ergonomics thing, we'll address that. But otherwise, everybody gets the same basic workstation. So, you know, this, my annoying daughter is doing something behind me here. So that approach, but you have to have some level of bureaucracy. You have to have some level of communication. And the more complicated the task you're trying to accomplish, the more agreement you have to have about how you're going to go about that. Otherwise, you end up with people working at cross purposes. And we can have more conversations about this later. I'm almost at 15 minutes already. But I think, you know, there's a difference between, too often bureaucracies are created and people lose sight of what they're trying to achieve with their bureaucracy. But bureaucracy in itself is not a bad thing. It's a framework within which you can come to agreement on shared purpose and keep yourself aligned with your goals. And it's true, if you've got really good management and you have taken a long-term approach to crafting a culture of trust and of freedom, you can have less structured bureaucracy. But if you don't have that, you have to achieve unity of purpose through a more highly structured bureaucracy. You know, it's different in all situations. Anyway, I'll talk to you more about this later. I'm going to watch the rest of your videos that you put up now. Still dead?